Right, so we're almost done with the basics of Python. So we've covered everything, almost everything so far, and last topic I want to touch base on is actually object-oriented programming or classes. So I want to give you a quick introduction on how they work, alright? We're going to create some very cool and interesting classes, and after 2 or 3 lectures of object-oriented programming, you'll slowly get the hang of how things work with classes. So this is actually the new and updated course. In my previous course, I had talked about classes quite little, and I realized that many students had problem understanding how classes work or how the init function works, stuff like that. So I'm going to read you the definition of class. A user-defined prototype for an object that defines a set of attributes that characterize any object of the class. So basically, a class has a set of attributes that are set for each object of our class. For example, I'm going to create a class, and follow me here and I'll explain what's happening. So to create a class, you type in class and then the class name. So class name, and then you can put in whatever you want. I'm just going to put in pass for now. So we've created a very simple class. This doesn't do anything, it doesn't have anything in it, but it works. So to create an object of the class, an instance of the class, the way I would do it is by creating the variable name. So this is an instance, and it's part of our class name class. So now instance is an object of this class. So you're probably wondering why classes? How does it make our life easier? Well, by creating classes, we can easily give attributes, give properties to different objects that are pertaining to the same category. Okay, so for example, if I created a class of candy, or maybe a class of students, right? Each student will have a name, an age, and a grade. And instead of trying to initialize those variables, call student 1 and then student 1 name, student 1 age, student 1 grade, I can create a class which has all those properties in it, and it makes life a lot more easier, trust me. So let's go ahead and actually do that. Let's go ahead and create a class called students, okay? Class students. Now, in this class students, there is a function called init, right? Def init. So type with me here, def init, and then the parameters. So what parameters does our instance or our students class take? Well, the first one is going to be self. So it always takes itself as the first parameter. The second one is going to be, name, then age, and then grade, right? So these are the 4 parameters that our students class takes, okay? Now the reason we took self is because we need a way to reference this object. There is no way to call this object unless we say self. So what I can do now is self.name will be equal to name, self.age will be equal to age, and self.grade will be equal to grade. So I know this is quite confusing. You probably have no clue what's going on. Stick with me for a good 2 more minutes and then I'll explain everything that's happening. After this, what we want to do is create an instance of this class. So I'm going to call my student student1. Okay, it's of type students, and his name is Bob. He is 12 years old and he is in 8th grade. I think that makes sense. No, it doesn't. 7th grade. Okay. So student 1, students, Bob, 12, 7th. So we have now created a class. We have an init function to go with it, and we have initialized an object for our students class. So now what I can do is I can call student1.name, student1.age, and student1.grade. Okay? So let's explain what just happened. We created a class called students, and we put in an init function. So I have had questions on this, that what does this initialize function do? How does it work? Well, whenever you're initializing an object of your class, you want to give it some properties. For example, if you have a cars class, okay? You have some fantastic cars, and you're initializing each object of your cars class. For example, Lamborghini. So what properties can you have of a Lamborghini? Maybe the engine, maybe the tires, maybe the color. So you add all those properties using this init function. Now all this init function does is it specifically says, hey, which parameters do you want to make it mandatory while initializing your object? So as you can see, when we initialize our student's object, we have to give a name, an age, and a grade. If I try creating my student 2, and if I say students, and I just give his name, let's say Avi, and if I just give him the age, I don't give him any grade, I get an error. Init missing one required positional argument grade. So what Python is telling me is, hey, the class that you have created requires 3 parameters, name, age, and grade. What you've given me is only 2 parameters, the name and the age. I need the 3rd parameter. So this first line just tells us that we want these 3 parameters. After that, what we're doing is we're setting those 3 parameters to our object. So we're saying our object.name should be equal to whatever name we passed in. Our object.age will be equal to whatever age we passed in, and our object.grade will be equal to whatever grade we passed in. So we have to specify that our object's values, or object.name, object.age, and object.grade have to be equal to, or give it some value. So if I did not put these 3 statements, if I go ahead and initialize this class again, and I delete all these 3 statements, and I just say pass, again, that filler word pass, and now if I initialize my student 1, right, and then that works, and if I now call give me my name, I get an error. Student's object has no attribute name. So once you've set the parameters for your class, you have to add the attributes, okay? You have to say self.name should be equal to whatever we've passed in, self.age should be equal to whatever age you passed in, and so on. So once you pass the parameters, you have to add the attributes. Alright, so this was a very basic introduction to classes. We learned how to initialize a class, we learned how to set attributes for a class. Now in the next lecture, what I want to do is I'll show you how to create functions for a class and utilize them and run them. See you then.